All right, family. How you guys doing? It is your girl, Dr. Shonna, with our Sunday night special. We are going to address some issues in the Black community. And as you have seen in my title, we are going to talk about NFAC, which is the Not Effing Around Coalition. We're going to talk about NAAGA, which is the National African American Gun Association. And we're going to remember Latasha Harlins, that was the 15-year-old out of California back in 1991 who was shot in the head by Soon Jing Do, Korean lady business owner, right? So we're going to have these conversations today. But in the meantime, in between time, y'all already know it's housekeeping time. I'm going to need you all to share the video. All right, share the video with your community. I'm going to share the video as well. I'm going to share right now on Facebook. I'm also going to need you all to like this channel. So hit the thumbs up into my 4 or 5. I think I gained 2 more haters. So the 7 haters, go ahead and hit the thumbs down. No matter what you do, just make sure you hit something. And to everyone else, just make sure you're spreading the word because I am on every Sunday and every Friday, primarily Sunday evening around the 5 o'clock hour and Fridays around 10 o'clock p.m. Unless I let you guys know I'm going to go earlier. I'm trying to be consistent in that way. I also have received some more donations. So toward the end of today's video, I'm going to give shout outs to all the people who have donated to me via the Cash App and other avenues. I really do appreciate those who are taking the time to send out the donations, as well as looking in the description of the video, finding how to donate to me and sending me donations. So I really do appreciate that because you guys just love me so much and I love you as well. So let me just go ahead and share this video. Y'all get your pen and paper. Y'all bring your notes, and to all my moderators, I absolutely love you guys. Always do I love you guys. Just be fair with how we are blocking people. People can have their own opinion just as long as everyone is respectful. Not everyone is going to agree with us. And, you know, people, just like you are allowed to have your opinion, when we push back, people who don't agree with your asses, when we push back, don't start getting mad, sending me emails, because quite frankly, when I get your stupid ass emails that are like 500 pages long, I'm just being honest with you all, I delete them. So I don't read stupid ass emails. So if you want to send me stupid stuff and you think that's going to get to me, you're the one that's just going to be suffering with a little bit of mental health issues because I'm not going to be reading your email. So I love you guys. Somebody says, I'm afraid of this subject. I do not want you to be afraid of this subject. We have to have this conversation. We have to have this conversation tonight. But let me start with our beloved Latasha Harlins. I want you guys to remember who our sister was. That was the young lady, the young Black lady in California. I believe it was March 1991. I would have to go to my notes to see if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was March 1991. She was the 15-year-old who I went into the grocery store to buy some orange juice, and she had the money in her hand, and she had put the orange juice in her bag as she was walking up to the counter to pay for the orange juice. And a scuffle ensued between her and the store owner, and the store owner shot her in the back of the head. But let me tell you why I'm bringing up this conversation with Latasha. I'm bringing up this conversation with Latasha because Netflix has a new documentary out. I believe it aired in September or October, not too sure, but it's a brand spanking new documentary that is out, and it is titled A Love Song for Latasha. It's a really quick documentary. It's about 20 minutes. It's a great watch. There were times that I teared up, and I said, not because it was sad, but I'm an empath. I love my community. I love my people. And I hate the fact that many of our people have been psychologically conditioned, and we are not always preparing ourselves, our children, our family members, our friends for this constant war that we have been in. And I think when people hear the word war, they get a little bit uncomfortable because I believe people think of bombs dropping, people are outright shooting each other, blood and bodies everywhere. We have to understand that this war against us is not only physical, it is psychological, it is emotional, and it is mental. And the reason why I teared up watching this, because there's so many nuggets that are dropped in this documentary. And I really do suggest you guys go and watch this documentary. But there's so many nuggets that's dropped there. And as I'm picking up the nuggets, I'm crying, right? So I'm just that sensitive person. Believe it or not, I am a tough girl, but like I told you, I don't have the S on my chest. I took the S off my chest a long time ago. I'm okay with being a lady. I'm okay with having emotions. I'm okay with crying. I'm okay with cussing somebody out. I'm okay with knocking somebody's head off as well. I'm okay with guns. Yeah, I'm okay with a hammer to your head. I'm okay with loving. I'm okay with laughing. I'm okay with hugging. I embrace all of my emotions, to say the least, because emotions are healthy. Not all behaviors are healthy, but I do believe that there are no such thing of healthy behaviors when you have to protect your community and when you have to protect yourself, right? With that being said, but I say that to say, as I was watching this documentary, as I said, I was tearing up because I notice the psychological programming our community has and how much our young children, both our sons and our daughters, how much they are at risk of harm because of our lack of understanding, our lack of preparation, our lack of reality, not wanting to look at the truth for what it is. So I found this documentary to be important for us to go over before I start talking about NFAC, which is the Not Effing Around Coalition, and before I start having a conversation about the National African American Gun Association. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I just want to point something out for you all that I want you to be aware of how America operates. And as I stated in my video prior to this, we have to understand that history tends to repeat itself. And so while I'm watching this love song for Latasha, I decided to revisit a documentary that I was watching a while ago. I revisited last night a documentary on the 1992 LA riots. Because if you understand California, how their gun laws shifted, and understand what happened during that riot, and understand what is happening right now, I think many of the people in our community would think a little bit differently about guns. At least I would like to say that. I know some of you guys are so afraid of guns, and you say guns kill people. It's stupid people that kill people and brave people that kill people, and people who are patriotic kill people. And you understand what I'm trying to say? I think you guys are knowing where I'm going with this. But let me tell you about Latasha that many of you guys may not have known. Before Latasha, somebody's asking, how was my wrist doing? Well, cooking with Dee Dee, sidebar to everybody else, because sometimes people ask me questions that takes us off track. And so y'all just got to forgive me because I love to engage with the community from time to time. But don't worry, I won't forget my place in this conversation. But Latasha, my wrist is still broken, believe it or not. I had 2 fractures in my wrist. The one around my thumb has not healed yet. It takes 8 weeks to heal. I still have my removable brace, but sometimes it gets kind of itchy and sweaty. So I just take it off for a little bit and then I put it back on. So after I get off with you guys, it will go back on and I will immobilize my thumb to promote the healing. Although my wrist doesn't hurt as much, it's still broken. As simple as that. But let's go on. Latasha's mom had passed away in 1985. Ironically, this is all making sense to me, so I hope you guys are catching that too. Ironically, from a gunshot to her torso area. And at Latasha's mom's death, Latasha's grandmother had took the children in to prevent them from going into the system. And she decided to raise her daughter's children. What's so weird about all of this is like, like for example, taking it back to Whitney Houston, how she died in a tub. A few years later, her daughter died in a tub. Here it is, Latasha, mom died 6 years by a gunshot. Latasha died 6 years later from a gunshot wound. This is important. This is important why I'm saying this, because oftentimes I think we get signs, right? Some people might say the ancestors, some people might say God, some people might say the universe. Whatever you say, it is your business. We get signs that oftentimes we don't pay attention to. We don't pay attention to. And so I found it very interesting that her cousin Shanice, I think that's how you pronounce her name, and her best friend Ty is helping to narrate the story about Latasha. And her cousin talks about the morning that she got up and she was ready to go to the movies with Latasha, but Latasha was already gone. And her grandmother wanted her to go to the store to get orange juice, and she didn't want to go, and she wanted to send her little brother, or not her little brother, because the cousin was the only girl, but I think it was Latasha's brothers, to the store. And they had no idea at that time that Latasha was shot and killed by the store owner. The police had came to the house later on that day and had knocked on the door and let them know that Latasha was a victim of a gunshot wound by the store owner, the Korean woman. And that's when their life pretty much started to fall apart from that moment. Her best friend narrates the story by saying, the day that Latasha was killed, she had no idea it was Latasha. And she speaks about going into the store, and she knew that Korean lady was batshit crazy. And she had told the Korean lady to like, hold up a minute, before you shoot me, let me get my money, not knowing the statement that was coming out her mouth had already happened to her best friend. So she was pretty much just saying, let me get my money before you shoot me. And there was another lady in the store that had said to her best friend, Ty, oh, did you hear about the girl that got shot? So the best friend is not even knowing that this is about her friend. She leaves the store. She sees her friend's brother, Terrell, crying with Latasha's jacket on. And it looked like he didn't want to be bothered. So she never put two and two together. And she went home. And while she got home, her parents sat her down. And her parents said, we're not going to be able to hide it from you anymore. And her parents took that time at that moment to tell her that her friend was the one that was shot and killed in the store. Now, let me pause for a second. Because we have to understand how every day we are given signs from the universe of what is occurring or what is about to occur. And oftentimes we ignore these things. I found it so interesting that this young lady, Ty, her best friend, will go into the store and make a comment that let me have you get my money before you shoot me, being sarcastic because they knew this lady was crazy, because Ty recalls an earlier incident where she went to the store with her mother, her brother, and they had all left the store, and her mother sent her back into the store to get some candy for her brother. And she had the candy in a bag with the receipt, and she had her head down counting the money to pay for the additional candies. And the lady had already pulled out her gun, the same Korean woman. Listen to what I'm saying, family. You got to listen to what I'm saying, family. The same Korean woman pulls out her gun, and there was a street worker. I'm going to respect her title. In the documentary, they called her a hooker, right? Where I grew up, they may refer to her as a prostitute. But because I'm a social worker, and we try to respect all people in their decisions, we try. I'm going to call her a street worker because she is getting paid for her services. There was a street worker in the store, and the street worker saved that girl's life that day. She has said to the Korean store owner, hold on a second, hold on a second. Her mother's right outside. Let me get her mother. And she ran out, got the mother. The mother runs into the store, and the mother is calming the lady down, letting her know that these items had already been paid for. And the mother goes in and shows the lady the receipts. And not only, come on, family, listen to what I'm saying, family. Not only does the mother hand over the additional monies for the additional candies, but she tells her daughter never to come into that store again because that lady is crazy and she's going to wind up killing somebody. Now, there's so much that's wrong with that family. See, I sort of felt when watching this portion of the documentary, I sort of felt that the mother at that time was receiving information from sources beyond her comprehension, albeit the ancestors, albeit angels, albeit the spirit of God, albeit the universe, albeit an alien, whatever you guys believe in. The mother was receiving information far beyond her comprehension, when she, in essence, prophesied to her daughter to stay out the store because that lady was going to wind up killing somebody. That's the first thing that I found quite interesting. Then I quickly became annoyed and frustrated. Shout out to Here for Truth. What's up, Here for Truth? How you doing? How you doing? Shout out to James Green, right? Shout out to all of my members in the YouTube community. Those are the people that joined the channel. Shout out to you guys. What I found interesting, which was heartbreaking for me, is that by giving this lady the money for new candies, it sort of, in my opinion, reinforced how do I say it? Because I want to be respectful to this community and to these people who have witnessed this heinous act, who are still living with the haunted memories of Latasha being shot by this woman. So I'm trying to be mindful because I think that when you have a platform, you have a social responsibility to an extent. Now, some people can just get it. And you know I ain't got no social responsibility to some people. Some people just get it. But for this situation, I want to respect these people. So I pause so I can try to gather my words. But what I'm thinking is my child's life and the other children in the community, their lives, and my life, and my sister's life, and my brother's life, whether they're biological or not, their lives are important to me and must be valued. And for me, how I live my life, I don't do business with people who do not have a respect for me. Now, one can argue nobody has a respect for us. And that might have some truth in it, right? It may not be the entire truth, but it has some truth in it, right? And then there's some things that we absolutely can't get around, right? But going into that lady's store, you can get around that. Seeing a woman pull a gun out on your child, we can make a decision and get around that. And then I sit back and I think about the fact that our communities have been strategically designed to allow for others to come in, devalue our existence, devalue our life, plague our community, exploit our community, give us nothing in return, and to disrespect us. That was strategic. It was strategic, systematic, and is designed that way. But I cannot blame the people who are constantly playing chess. I blame us because somewhere along the line, we have adopted a mindset of this pseudo safety, believing that we are safe, believing that people love, admire, respect us, believing that the laws apply to us as well, believing that we are protected as long as we are in our community, not looking at the bigger picture, not looking at the danger that happens. But another thing that I want to bring out as I move this conversation forward is the fact that this mother told her child, oh, come on, this is, you know, on Sundays we address the Black community. Family, I hope y'all with me. Sundays we address the Black community. I told you guys I was going to commit myself to addressing us, whether I'm educating us for the purpose of elevation or whether I'm teaching, because we have to shift our mindset, we have to change our behaviors. Today we have to shift our mindset and we have to change our behaviors, because the mother told this young lady, Ty, not to do business in this woman's store. This mother told her to stay out of the store because this woman was going to kill somebody someday. Now this lady, she's now a lady, Ty, she was a child at that time, is recalling the incident where she went into the store to buy something and she told the lady to calm down, let me get my money before she shoot me, not realizing her friend already had got shot, right? And killed in that store, not realizing the conversation that was going on in the neighborhood was about her friend, not understanding that. But your mother told you prior to that incident to stay out of that store. And I have to sit back and I have to say, how many of us are serious about writing our children? Because our children are being brought up in a society that programs their mind to believe the threat is removed, that programs their mind to believe that we live in a colorblind society. Our children do not view threat in the same manner in which we view it. And sometimes, parents, we just know what we know. We have X amount of years over our children on this earth, and we have to make sure that it is clear and that our rules are enforced, because it's not because we're trying to be big and bad mommies and daddies, but because we are at war and people don't understand it. We have to continuously protect our children. And our children have to follow what we are saying. So this happened. The incident happened. Los Angeles were in uproar. Business owners started to arm themselves with guns. White business owners, Korean business owners, on Korean radio. On Korean radio, y'all don't believe me? Look it up. On Korean radio, they had put out announcements calling for people within their community. And when I say community, I'm talking about the likeness of their characteristics, the likeness of their culture, their ethnicity. That's what I mean when I say community. I'm not talking about, you know, the north side, the south side. I'm just saying members of their community. There was a call on Korean news and Korean media, Korean radio that let them know to come out, take arms, and protect their businesses, because California was burning down and people were being beat senselessly in the street. The community was angry because shortly, weeks after Latasha Harlins was murdered, the Rodney King beating happened. Y'all do remember that. And when the verdict came out as not guilty, the community went nuts. I don't know what other way to say it. But here's the thing. As we're getting angry with our emotions, as we're out on the streets throwing rocks through the window, looting, burning down buildings, burning down cars. I mean, Los Angeles ass was set on fire. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? They haven't seen a riot like that since the Watts riot in 67, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 1967. They haven't seen anything like that in a very long time. And guess what, family? Come on, I'm going into NFAC. I'm about to get into NFAC and NAAGA in a second. But guess what, family? We were the people who were not armed, but were mainly killed during the LA riots. Did you hear me? I don't think some of y'all caught that, because I'm going somewhere with this. We're about to connect these dots today. We were the people who were mainly killed, and we were the people who were unarmed. So what do we know? What do we know about what transpired on these days, right? What do we know? Rodney King got beaten. Latasha got shot. The cops got off not guilty. The store owner did no jail time. In fact, she received probation, 400 hours of community service, and a $500 fine. No jail time whatsoever. Latasha was found with the $2 in her hand that she intended to pay the woman when the woman grabbed her book bag to try to get the orange juice, accusing Latasha of stealing. Latasha is telling her she's not stealing. The lady is dragging her by the book bag. Latasha turned around, gave her the two-piece, bop, 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 right in her eye, gave her the two-piece. The lady picks up a stool, throws it at Latasha. Latasha goes to get her bag to turn around and walk away. She still wanted to pay this lady. After there is a physical altercation, she still wants to pay this lady. She gets a bag, bends down, stands up, and you see her drop. The lady shoots her in the back of the head. This lady got no jail time. This lady got a $500 fine. This lady had to do 400 hours of community service. The community was mad. And this is what led to the riots. This is everything. The community just being angry. Thank you for that donation, Benyaz Israel. The community was so upset about everything that happened. And they responded. They responded with the LA riots. The Koreans armed themselves. The media started to highlight our community as being the violent community, as always. They don't ever say anything different. They started to tell the story in the 1992 LA riots, started to tell the story before the Rodney King of how the gangs came in and guns came in into the communities, and the gangs started taking over in the communities, and the gangs came out of the Black Power movement. When the Black Power movement was dismantled, gangs started to get formed, and illegal guns started to flood the streets, and all this other narrative that came out as it relates to the LA riot. They had a black mayor, didn't matter. They had a crazy racist police commissioner, crazy as hell. All this crazy stuff started happening. The community was upset, and we were upset about the same thing we are upset about today. We was upset about police brutality. We was upset about racial inequalities, upset about injustices in the just us system. We was upset about the same stuff today we was upset about in 1992, right? As all the media did was tell nothing but lies to paint their picture. But here's what I want you to know. We cannot understand the LA riots until we fully understand the Watts riots. And I'm not going to get too deep into the Watts riots, because I did a video on this before, and if I got to do another video on the Watts riots, I will do that. But you got to understand that when that happened, of course, another injustice against a black man, is what spurred those riots. When that happened, the Black Panther Party came out heavily armed because at that time, California had an open carry law. So they came out to protect their streets and to make sure that police violence and police brutality was not going to continue to happen against their community. And there was white fear associated with seeing Black men. Y'all know where I'm going with this, right? I hope y'all know where I'm going with this because y'all know what we're talking about today. Y'all know what we're talking about today. I want you to understand that white people responded. They weren't responding because of Latasha's death. They weren't responding because of the Rodney King beating. They were responding because white people have a history of fearing us, and especially in that area of California, when you think back to the Watts riots, that's all they see us as violent. So if you understand what happened in the 60s when the Black Panther Party came out fully armed with California gun laws to make sure the police did their goddamn jobs, white people responded to that. The white power forces that be responded to that. And let's go over what happened when they wanted to respond to seeing a lot of Black people outside, right? Outside with guns in the 60s. Because in order for you to understand why in 1992, when the riots happened, why we weren't the ones out there with the guns, making sure, we was regulating, you got to understand how the power forces conditioned and socialized our community to not being gun owners. So let me share this with you guys. Here it is. We talk about how California got tough on guns. And I'm just going to read to you guys a little blurb so you get just a little understanding of what happened. It says here, let me highlight so y'all can read what I'm reading. Right? The modern American gun debate began on May 2nd, 1967, when 30 protesting members of the Black Panther Party marched into the California Capitol with loaded guns, shotguns, and rifles. As photos of gun-toting radicals from Oakland hit the front pages across the country, many Americans were shocked to see who was embracing the Second Amendment. In California, as in most states at the time, there were few restrictions on carrying loaded weapons in public. That soon changed. The Panthers' efforts to police the police already had led Republican Assemblyman Don Mulford, because remember, it's the Mulford Act, right? So this is where you understand, when you hear the word Mulford Act, you have to understand where that is coming from. Don Mulford to propose legislation to ban the open carry of loaded firearms within California cities and towns. After the Panthers showed up in the Capitol, his bill sailed through and was signed by then Governor Ronald Reagan. Yes, that Reagan. It's hard to say which now seems more unlikely, that 24 revolutionaries could legally stroll into the state assembly chamber with semi-automatic rifles, or that a Republican governor would champion stricter gun laws. Let me stop right there for just a second, because we're going to get into the next article, right? Let me stop right there for just a second. So you have to understand. You have to understand that in the 60s, when we decided to police and patrol our community, we were seen as a threat. And as a result, they changed the law. See, that's what they do. Whenever we start to present as a threat to the power structure, legislation and laws will be changed. Not because the Korean store owner shot Latasha in the back of the head, not because of that. Not because Police have been shooting us down and killing us for as long as we can remember, not because of that, but because there were a large number of Black people in public carrying loaded rifles and guns. And that was the catalyst that propelled Mulford into signing into legislation a law banning open carry in California. You got to understand who was behind that, people. You have to understand that the NRA, the National Rifle Association, you have to understand that they did not want us to carry guns, even though it's the Second Amendment. They were concerned about that. And in reference to that Mulford Act, they pushed for that to happen too. Why am I saying this? Because that was in 1967. In 1992, the riots happened. And the conversation shifted. The conversation shifted. It took on a different beast when once again, white people had to, and the power forces, the NRA and other white people that support that structure, had to move once again to protect themselves. Because I don't know how many buildings it was, but I'm going to tell you, they burned down maybe 862 buildings were destroyed during the 1992 LA riots. $1 billion worth of damage. 8,000 arrested. 2,000 suffered from injury, and over 50 people died, and most of them were Black. You got to understand that white people, once again, were in fear of their lives. And what do white people do when they are in fear of their lives? They move to create laws and legislation to protect their lives, not your rights, not your civil rights, not your First Amendment rights, not your Second Amendment rights. No, no, no. This is not about you, brother and sister. This is about them. So let's read this 1992 article, as you can see here, written by Timothy Egan. 1992, y'all see me highlighting it. May 14, 1992. After the riots, Los Angeles riots spurring big rise in sale of guns. This is the state who had strict laws. This is the state that thought it was a threat, and they had to get rid of it because guns were killing people. Now let's read something right here. Here we go. We're going to read these two paragraphs, or three paragraphs. The first one, sorry, family. The first one we're going to read here is this. I always thought if there was a serial rapist or murderer loose, my business would go up. But nothing beats a race riot, said Sean Collinsworth, the owner of Deadly Force, a personal gun training service in Los Angeles. People are really scared. A jungle out there. Members of the National Rifle Association has been gaining in membership over the last year. Say they will use the riots to press their argument against gun control. These are the same people in the 60s that pressed their argument for gun control, who later now turns around in 1992 and decide we're going to press the issue against gun control. The association, with 2.8 million members, you got to remember that number. This is back in 1992. Trust me, their membership has since grown. With 2.8 million members, says it has added 1,000 members a day since the riots began. I end by saying this part. People are coming to the conclusion that even in the best of times, there is not a lot the police can do for you, said Fred Romero, the association's field representative in Southern California. Nobody's safe. It's really a jungle out there. This is propaganda. And this is how they talk to convince people not only to join their membership, but also to get people to understand that you have to take up arms. You have to arm yourself and be prepared, because it is a jungle out there, and the jungle consists of monkeys, and the monkeys are Black people. That was in 1992, my sisters and brothers. 1992. 1992, my sisters and brothers. 1992. Now we have, in 2017, 3 years ago, the starting of the the Not Effing Around Coalition, NFAC, which is led by Grandmaster Jay, who started this organization in Atlanta back in 2017. This organization gained popularity, media attention is what I mean when I say popularity, when they were filmed marching through Stone Mountain Park in Georgia, and that was in July. They were marching for racial equality. They were marching to end police brutality. They were marching to take the Confederate piece of craps down. They were marching to put an end to the abuses within our community from outside sources and forces. They're marching to end the disrespect of Black men, Black women, and Black children. And they take up arms, and they're exercising their Second Amendment right. And it seems like history, in terms of the narrative, in terms of media, in terms of putting together propaganda, history seems to be repeating itself all over again. So everyone's seeing all of these beautiful Black men and Black women marching with guns on Black on Black on Black on Black is how they dress. They're marching in solidarity. They're marching disciplined. They're marching in formation. They're out there. They're unapologetic. And they are holding their own intellectually. Whenever you hear Grandmaster Jay speak, regardless of what people think about his appearance, regardless of what people may think about his eccentric manner, when he speaks, he is able to not only contain himself through his communication, but he makes very valid points. But yet, America is starting the smear campaign. And of course, you know, Black people be helping them. You already know how Black people are. America is starting the smear campaign, interviewing him, highlighting the 2 incidents that happened at the organization. One, somebody wasn't even with them. Another one, somebody fainted, whatever the case is, whatever the media is saying. Who knows what the hell they're saying. But they're starting this smear campaign because now they're having the narrative resurface in the media as though this is a Black militia group that ought to be watched. And they're trying to liken them to the Black Panther Party. They're not highlighting the fact that Grandmaster Jay and his groups go through all legal channels to get law enforcement cooperation and permits so that they can march peacefully and openly express their Second Amendment rights. They're not really highlighting that. That is not the conversation. The conversation is about the fear of a race war. The conversation is about gun laws. The conversation is about rifles. The conversation is about Black people with guns, even though they're not verbally saying this. This is a group that avoids violence. I mean, if violence comes, I'm pretty sure they'll handle it, right? But this is a group that avoids violence. This is a group that follows the laws. This is the group that is disciplined. They're structured, and the media is painting them as a threat. The group's goal, from what I gather, are two main things. And I'm not saying there aren't other things. I'm saying two main things. It's to protect our community, and to self-police our communities, and to educate the Black community on firearms as well as their constitutional rights. That is a threat. But yet white world says it echoes the Black Panther Party, right? This group is not the same as white militia. White militia have been around a lot longer than this organization. White militia are violent. This organization is not. White militia has way more guns and ammunition, and they are there with intent to incite violence. This group is so structured and organized that in Louisville, that's how you say it, but some people might read it on paper and they would say Louisville, but it's Louisville. They came in contact with a white militia group called the Three Percenters, right? And in that contact, Grandmaster Jay had handled this audience, his membership, his coalition accordingly, because he was structured to discipline them enough to know we don't want to have any violent contact. And nothing happened. Nothing happened. But this group, because historically to see Black men with guns, and now in 2020, seeing more Black people exercising their Second Amendment right, more Black people taking up arms, because our community continues to be neglected, our community continues to be abused, our community continues to be the intended target for a lot. People don't want to hear it, but it's the truth. So much so that there was a representative out in southern Louisiana. His name his name is Clay Higgins. He's not dead. I said was. Oh Lord, that might be the universe. Who knows, or the ancestors? It ain't me. I'm just saying. I said was, but you know the ancestors have been moving, so we don't know what's going to happen, baby. But nonetheless, Clay Higgins had posted, he had took down a post since then, but he had posted on his social media site, his campaign site that is, that he knew of NFAC coming to southern Louisiana. And what he said was, he will drop 10 of you where you stand if you come to Lafayette. That's what he said. That's what he said. But why is it that NFAC, the Not Effing Around Coalition, is getting so much slack from media and within our community, where we had the National African American Gun Association around for the last 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken. And that organization is led by Philip Smith. I don't know how old he is now, but I know that the first time this guy picked up a gun and shot a gun at practice range, he was 54 years old. An interview where I seen him speaking, he was 57 in that interview. So he was 3 years new handling a gun. He never had a relationship with guns prior to moving to Georgia. This is a guy who grew up in California, if I'm not mistaken. Never had a relationship to guns until he got to Georgia, because in Georgia, guns is a way of life. And his goal is not that much different in terms of wanting to educate the African American men and women to learn how to shoot and wanted to develop their education as it pertains to guns. Now, he's not talking about policing Black communities. He's not talking about making sure that police officers stop shooting us down. He's not talking about any of that stuff. This guy, Philip Smith. But I'm saying Black people with guns is not new. Black people with guns is not new. But all of a sudden, in fact, NFAC, not effing around coalition, comes on the scene and the conversation ensues again about Black people with guns. So here's what I'm going to say as I end out family. This is something that we have to really understand. Every time we become a threat, there will be laws and policies to try to keep us in our place. And the laws and policy will not be equal. They will not be. We know that once upon a time, Black people could not own guns. We understand that, the previous laws were designed to prohibit us from exercising our Second Amendment rights. And because of that history, generations of Black people, as a result of these oppressive gun laws, have become psychologically programmed and conditioned to despise guns, to be fear of guns. I feel there's no need for guns. Because the system has strategically placed unlawful guns in our communities, which have increased the violence among our communities. All of this is within system. We already know how these guns got in our communities. We already know that they drop crates of guns, unlicensed guns, unlawful guns in our community. We already know how that happened, to paint the narrative of why these gun laws have to exist and why we shouldn't have them. So we're psychologically now programmed. All of this stuff was programming. We're psychologically programmed to be cautious about exercising our Second Amendment rights. We're cautious about having guns in our home. We're cautious about shooting guns. I remember when I did my video, when I took my son, he was about 14 years old or something, to the gun range. And we was busting it up. And of course, Black people had a problem with it. You teaching your son to shoot guns? I don't know. This is not a good look, Doc. Oh, Doc, I don't know about that. Guns kill people. Oh, Doc. Meanwhile, Rebecca and Billy are taught how to shoot guns at 7 years old. See, I want y'all to pay attention to this. That all the current talk about violence, all the media highlighting armed Blacks, and the debate or the conversation about Blacks taking up arms and exercising their Second Amendments, and the Democrats, I know y'all don't like to hear it, but it is what it is. You lucky I'm out of time, because I was showing y'all some proof and some C-SPAN legislation videos that y'all need to see, But the Democrats keep pushing for a major change in the gun laws. And they're limiting certain guns, or AR-15s, magazines that hold more than 10 rounds in it. All the guns that we have ran out there and we have bought, they're trying to take them away. But that's a whole nother conversation. I'm just saying, with everything that we're seeing in the media, all the images, all the talks about Blacks taking up guns, all the debates about it, you got to listen to what the person y'all voting for, right? Y'all got to listen to what the person y'all voting for, how he talks about certain people that have guns, and it's code language, is dog whistles for Black folks. And if I wasn't out of time, I will show y'all the video. I'll show it to you next time. I have no reason to lie. This all should alarm us. And at the very minimum, raise our critical thinking skills so we can understand what is happening. What is happening? And what is this world moving toward? We should not be afraid to take up arms. We should not be afraid to exercise our Second Amendment rights. We have a right to that. We should be afraid of power forces that are creating legislations that harm our community. We should be afraid of power forces that create legislation that could potentially take away our rights to bear arms, because you already know anytime they get scared, I already showed you guys and I demonstrated in this video, anytime they get scared, laws are created and our rights are oppressed, our rights are suppressed, our rights are limited. This is not about whether you like guns or not. Just because you don't like guns doesn't mean that all of us should not like guns. And just because you think that there should be more strict laws on guns, because you really do think it's going to make a difference, because you're not aware of how guns got into our community, just like how drugs got into our community. If you don't see the problem with us being unarmed, if you don't see the problem with everyone having no issue with pulling a gun on us, whether they're citizens or police, we already seen countless accounts of this, and we are typically the only ones unarmed in these incidents. Thank you so much for that donation, Steve. We are the ones typically unarmed. We have been psychologically conditioned and programmed to be afraid of guns. We have been psychologically conditioned and programmed to not exercise our Second Amendment rights. I think that is a problem. We do not need to continue to be sitting ducks at the hands of others. Now, this video isn't about whether or not I like NFAC or not. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that. This is not me saying go with the National African American Gun Association or go with the non-effing around coalition. I'm not, what you do is what you do, and that's your business. I'm not shitting on nobody. I'm not trying to convince anybody. What I'm showing you is history repeating itself. What I'm showing you is how the media starts to use propaganda and language to, before they set up to do something else that strategically limits, oppresses, or harms our community. That is all I'm doing, people. In order for you to understand what is happening, you have to understand what has happened prior. So that's all I was doing, is letting you guys know the history of how they went from banning guns to the NRA changed it, saying taking up arms, and what is going to come next. The NFA, the Not Effing Around Coalition is growing. The NAAGA coalition, the National of African American Gun Association, is growing. More people in our community are interested in their Second Amendment rights. More people in our community are teaching their children how to shoot, teaching their wives how to shoot. They're going to gun range. They're learning how to dismantle guns and put them back together. They're learning how to make sure there's no bullet in the chamber. You got to know how to do all of that. Gun education is so very much important. It's not enough to say, but Doc, don't you think if we take up arms, they're going to kill more of us? If that is your reason to stay unarmed, God bless you. God bless you. I'm glad I don't have that mindset. I'm glad I don't think like that. Because I don't need to see another incident where someone comes into one of our homes and shoots us dead and gets off. I don't need to see another incident where someone is jogging and is shot dead. I don't need to see another incident where we're left out there at the hands of a civilian who is playing neighborhood police, following one of us, one of our Black sons, one of our Black daughters, and put a bullet in us, and then say he attacked me and I was exercising my Second Amendment right to carry and to protect myself. I'm not trying to convince any of you guys either way. There's so many nuggets in this video. You can eat the meat and throw out the bones. You can take what you want, throw the whole damn video away if you want to. Do whatever you want to do with it. But I have come to realize in all of my life, my career, and my education, when you want to know where something is going, you have to know where you came from. You got to understand the history. You got to understand the laws. You got to understand how you're sold a trick bag every goddamn day through media, how your mind is conditioned and programmed to believe what the left wing liberal thinkers are believing. You support them, and then you are the one who is the sitting duck as a result. You are the one that gets harmed. You are the one that gets oppressed. You are the one that winds up with the short end of the stick because you believed all the programming and the conditioning that you have been fed daily through different media avenues. So I want to say the conversation in our homes must turn, it must change. We must start being critical in our thoughts. We must stop being fearful and stand up and take advantage of all that the Constitution affords us. That's all I have for you people. I love you all. Thank you for tuning in. May you all have a blessed night. And as for me, I'll keep on shooting.